As an executive and leadership coach, I have the fortunate opportunity to work with many amazing business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs. And one thing that I have found that they all have in common is that they're focused on execution and results. One of the best practices that they put into play is focusing on quarterly objectives. What matters most this quarter? It's what I like to call the next 90 days. Can you imagine the ability to focus your business on just the next 90 days? But knowing that you're doing so in total alignment to culture and strategy. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's start with our quarterly objectives. What matters most? How do we determine what's so important this quarter that we should be focusing on? Well, unfortunately, most organizations focus on the dollars this quarter. How much revenue do we need to make? How much profitability? How much shareholder return do we need to drive? Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't focus on those things. I'm just suggesting that that should not be the determining factor for what matters most this particular quarter. It could be one of the things that matters most, but it shouldn't be how we determine the rest of the objectives. So what does determine our quarterly objectives? Well, this might seem like a no-brainer, but you guessed it, our annual objectives. But once again, how do we determine what our annual objectives are? And the same principle usually applies, where people think about profitability, return to shareholders, revenue growth. Again, very important, perhaps one of the annual objectives, no question, but shouldn't be what determines all the annual objectives. So what then does determine what our annual objectives should be? Well, that is mission. Our mission determines what our annual objectives are. Now, mission statements have been totally misinterpreted for many years. We've been getting mission wrong. Mission is actually the next evolution of our business. It's not a static statement that sits up on the wall. Business is a series of evolutions, and our mission is that. What is the next evolution of our business? It's the 3-year look in terms of what business do we need to build in the next 3 years, and then what would we need to achieve in the next 12 months to know that we're on track for that 3-year mission? How then did we decide what business we need to become in the next 3 years? That is vision. Vision is that inspirational picture 10 or 20 years from now of the world that we see. And once we know the world that we see, we can then go, who do we need to become then as a business to start creating that world? So what determines our vision then? Our purpose determines our vision. Our purpose is the problem we're most passionate about solving for our customers. Let me assure you, if your purpose does not serve your customers, it's not your purpose. Once we've discovered what our purpose is as a business, what's going to keep us on track to that purpose? Well, that's our values. Our values are the guardians of our purpose. They are what guide us to make smarter decisions in fulfilling our purpose in the world. Now, we all know that people buy why we do what we do, but your values are why they buy it from you, because this is the unique thinking about the way you go about solving this problem. And our values are there to tell us how to behave as an organization, because how I think determines how I act. So how does this all tie into quarterly objectives? Well, the best way for me to demonstrate that is now I'm going to reverse the order. When we're very clear on why our business exists and what we value as an organization in solving that problem, what would the world look like when we're expressing that purpose through these values 10 or 20 years from now? We see a world where, then as said, well, what business do we need to become then to start creating that world? And then work back from the 3-year objectives that we would need to accomplish to say, hey, we've become that business, and say, what do we need to accomplish in the next 12 months in terms of objectives to say we're on track to becoming that business, that next evolution of our business. Then we can work out what matters most this quarter. This is how you determine what matters most. Now here's the interesting part where we create this sense of alignment. Because each of those quarterly objectives that we have are going to need to have some metrics to show that we've accomplished them. So can you imagine this quarter we've determined 3 things that matter most in terms of what we need to accomplish to set us on this path to becoming the business we need to become. What we need to do is make sure we have some metrics in place. And I would usually suggest about 3 to 5 key results for each quarterly objective. The simple way to look at this is two key metrics that we should have in place are one is quantitative, the other is qualitative, and then you could have a couple other metrics if you decide. Let's take our revenue objective as an example. In this particular quarter, if we decided that we needed to drive $100,000 in revenue this quarter, that would be a quantitative metric. But we might need to throw in a qualitative metric to the side of that, which might be we want to do that at a certain percentage or margin in terms of gross profit. Now you may wish to add other metrics. In this case, we might say we also would like to make sure that 25% of that comes from new business. So you'll set key metrics for each quarterly objective. Then, of course, what we need to do then is work out what our action plans are for each of those objectives. So here's where it all ties in. Now we have our action plans, we're focused on what matters most, we know how we're going to measure it, but remember, our values are the unique thinking of our business. They tell us how to think, and then they determine how we should behave as an organization. So our values then make sure that we are following those action plans in alignment with the behaviors of our organization. That we're acting within the unique thinking to solve this problem in the world for our customer. So this is how you determine what matters most in your business. And you know that it's in total alignment from a cultural framework, strategic framework, to a tactical framework, and a performance framework. The exciting part about this systematic approach to setting quarterly objectives for your business in alignment is that it creates rapid implementation and radical transparency in your business, because now everybody can see what matters most to the business. That means everyone in your organization has a sense of clarity about what's important to this business this particular quarter, and in alignment with the annual objectives, and very clear in the business that we're building together. There's no reason to set arbitrary objectives every quarter. They should be in total alignment to building the business that you need to build to create the world that you see, which is you fulfilling your purpose through your values. Then when you engage your team in developing the action plans to achieve these key metrics tied to what matters most, you'll have an engaged and empowered and an inspired workforce that's continually evolving and staying relevant in the hearts and minds of your customers, the business of your organization. What's your system for achieving what matters most in your business?